Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're jumping right into one of biology's absolute oldest, most baffling mysteries. Why do we actually age? The crazy truth is, science barely understands why or how aging even happens in the first place, let alone how to hit the brakes on it. But hey, by looking at some seriously mind-blowing clues scattered across the animal kingdom, we can finally start to decode this biological clock that is ticking inside every single one of us. So let's dive right into this bizarre disparity. This is actually a question that even Aristotle was scratching his head over centuries ago. Why exactly does a hamster get just 2 years on this earth, a mouse gets maybe three, while other species seem to literally conquer time? To wrap our heads around this, we have to look at two massive extremes. Think about the frantic, heavily predated life of a tiny mouse, compared to the incredibly slow, completely predator-free existence of a massive bowhead whale. Because mice are constantly being hunted, right? So they evolved what's called a fast life history. They grow, they develop, and they reproduce as rapidly as possible before something eats them. But the whale? It's safely cruising the oceans without a care in the world, so it has the evolutionary luxury to just take its sweet time. We're talking an estimated lifespan of over 200 years. And honestly, the rules get even weirder when we look past mammals. Take this specific jellyfish, for example. It's an extreme outlier. Now, it's not totally invincible. You can still kill it, but it is technically biologically immortal. It can literally rejuvenate. It just rolls its biological clock completely backward to an earlier stage of development and starts its entire life all over again. Biological time for this little guy doesn't just march straight forward like it does for you and me. Section 1. Evolution, Predators, and Lifespan. Okay, so how did this massive variation in lifespan actually happen? Well, it all basically boils down to the danger of being eaten. In biology, this is the concept of extrinsic mortality. Animals exposed to really high predation, your mice, your rats, they were literally forced by evolution to hit the fast forward button on growing and reproducing. In the wild, a mouse rarely makes it past a single year. But animals that are heavily protected from predators, whether that's by the sheer massive size of a whale, the heavy armored shell of a tortoise, the deep underground tunnels of a mole rat, or even the intelligence of a human, they didn't need to rush. That built-in protection gave them the breathing room to evolve slower development and much, much longer lives. This actually perfectly sets up a fantastic insight from molecular biogerontology expert João Pedro de Magalhães. As he points out, human beings sit right at the top of the food chain. Because our ancient ancestors used their sheer intelligence to outsmart and escape predators, we effectively bought ourselves the ultimate evolutionary luxury: time. We secured the safety needed to grow slowly, develop these incredibly complex brains, and eventually live out a much longer lifespan. Our longevity isn't an accident, it perfectly fits our evolutionary history. But, despite completely escaping the jaws of predators, we still inevitably decay. We all suffer this progressive, inevitable physical degeneration. And here is a pretty startling biological truth for you. Once you hit about age 30, your chance of dying literally doubles roughly every 8 years. Yep, it's an incredibly consistent hallmark of aging across all human populations. Section 2. The cellular countdown. To actually see how this evolutionary biological clock ticks, we have to zoom way in, right inside your own body. Your body is made up of trillions of cells, and they are constantly dividing to keep you alive and kicking. Inside those cells, your DNA is tightly packed into chromosomes, and sitting at the very ends of these chromosomes are things called telomeres. You can kind of think of them like those protective little plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces. They're essentially just meaningless repeats of DNA that we can totally afford to lose, and their whole job is just protecting the vital genetic information packed inside. And this mechanism ties directly into the aging process. See, every single time a cell divides, it has to make a copy of its DNA. But the copying process isn't perfect. It actually skips over the very ends of the chromosomes. Because of this little glitch, those expendable telomeres get a tiny bit shorter each and every time a cell divides. They act as a literal physical countdown timer running inside your cells. And eventually, that countdown hits 0. When those telomeres are completely stripped away, the cell permanently stops replicating. Biologists call this state cellular senescence. Once a cell hits this wall, it gradually loses its function and just dies off, which causes all those familiar physical characteristics we associate with getting older. And honestly, this is exactly why your life expectancy is such a strongly inherited trait. You literally got your initial telomere length directly from your parents. So, the crucial point here really comes down to the number 50. In human beings, the absolute cellular replication limit is roughly 50 times before senescence officially kicks in. Your cells can only divide about 50 times before the clock just completely stops. Now, you might be thinking, right? Why on earth would evolution give us such a strict, seemingly self-defeating biological limit? Well, surprisingly, this isn't just a random design flaw. It's actually a completely critical evolutionary defense mechanism. This hard limit helps prevent the uncontrollable, run-alike growth of cells, which is otherwise known as cancer. So it's a massive biological trade-off between growing old and protecting your body from rogue, mutating cells. Section 3. Secrets of ageless animals. Remember how we said genetics basically dictate everything? You could put a mouse in a totally safe room, let it watch TV all day with zero stress, but it's still going to age 20 to 30 times faster than a human. But there are certain complex creatures out there that actively break these rules. They show absolutely zero signs of increased mortality or physiological degeneration, even over decades of intense study. We're talking Galapagos tortoises, rockfishes, and Olm salamanders. They exhibit what scientists call negligible aging. And flatworms, oh man, they can literally endlessly regenerate their telomeres. They keep their cellular clocks from ever running out, though, they can obviously still die from a disease or an environmental hazard. To figure out exactly how they pull this off, researchers are leaning heavily into modern tech. Because DNA sequencing is relatively cheap and incredibly rapid nowadays, scientists have successfully sequenced the genomes of these incredibly long-lived, disease-resistant animals, like the 200-year-old bowhead whale and the crazy resilient naked mole rat. They are desperately hunting through mountains of genetic data, looking for the specific DNA repair genes and pathways that give these animals their superpower. And here is the truly exciting part. We already know it's genetically possible to hack this system. Scientists have achieved some truly dramatic leaps just by tweaking single genes in animal models in the lab. They've already extended the lives of mice by up to 50%. And get this, in worms, tweaking just a single gene extended their lifespan by a staggering 1,000%. To put that into perspective, that is 10 times their normal natural life. Section 4. Can we hack aging? Could we actually one day harness these biological secrets to create a literal longevity pill or a genetic treatment for humans? Like, can we take what we've learned from whales, mole rats, and flatworms and apply it directly to our own cellular countdown? I absolutely love this analogy from Magallanes. He says that just as birds proved to humanity that heavier-than-air flight was physically possible long before the first airplane ever existed, these ageless animals prove that inevitable biological decay isn't a hard, unbreakable law of physics. Nature has quite literally already built biological machines that do not age. We just need to learn how they operate. So as you go about your day today, just take a second to think about how millions of years of evolution and the constant looming threat of predators actually gave you the incredible long lifespan you currently enjoy. Your clock is ticking right now, literally cell by cell. But ask yourself this: what might humanity achieve if we finally crack the genetic code and learn how to permanently stop the ticking? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.